Alrighty, so today we're going to talk about FC Cincinnati in the Moving Forward series episode. And apologies the fact that you can't really read the text because I decided to go with orange, and that continue the theme of matching the color of the team in this Moving Forward series episode. And since Cincinnati, their primary color is orange, I probably could have also done it blue as well because that's their other primary color. Yeah, that's why, you can't really read the text relatively well. But there's no doubt that, for Cincinnati, I think, this is an example of why it is just so hard for a team that go through a bit of a redemption year after falling short of reaching the ultimate goal last season, of reaching to MLS Cup, and then choking against Columbus in the Eastern Conference Final. And how I've talked about before how every time when teams are trying to go for these redemption tour heading into the next season, trying to get themselves back into that stage, more times than not, it does not worked out. And for Cincinnati, this is another example of it. And to be fair, early in the season, it looked like they were on the verge of getting back to the Eastern Conference Final, at least be one of the contending team in the Eastern Conference. That they were definitely among the top teams in the Eastern Conference. They were battling with Inter Miami for a while for that supporter shield spot, and then the injuries happened. And then once the injuries happen and the second half happens, just like what we talked about RSL in the last Moving Forward series episode, yeah, it didn't go so well. Although, unlike RSL, where, for RSL, it was kind of a rapid decline, for Cincinnati, it was kind of a bit of a slow decline in the second half of the season to a point where, unfortunately, a result of a very disappointing first round exit. But that being said, they did still finish the regular season with an 18-5-11 record and finished with 59 points. They scored 58 goals this season while allowing 48 goals with a goal differential of plus 10. They still finished with a respectable third place in the Eastern Conference, though, even though I say it's respectable, they were among the top two team for most of the season. And again, that slow, gradual decline eventually got to the point where Columbus actually took them in that second position. And we already talked about at that point of how bad that could be for Cincinnati, especially if there's going to be a Hell is Real Derby in the second round. And it turns out that we didn't even get that. I mean, we didn't even came close of getting a Hell is Real Derby. Who would have thought that, in the next round where everybody was looking for the Hell is Real Derby, instead we got the New York Derby between the Red Bulls and NYCFC. Speaking of NYCFC, they got eliminated by NYCFC in the first round. And look at the last 5 seasons for Cincinnati. So the last 2 seasons has been relatively successful because we know that in the 5 year span for Cincinnati before this season, it's been kind of separated by two different kind of team. One that basically had Pat Nolan in charge and Chris Albright really changed the culture of this team really just overnight, and then a team that basically was just completely clueless in their first four season, or at least in their first 3 season in the league, and basically not just being an absolute dumpster fire, but basically just a complete basement dweller for the first 3 season. But in 2023, they of course finished in first position with a 29-5 record. They finished with 69 points, but unfortunately they lost to the Columbus Crew in the Eastern Conference Final. In 2022, they finished in fifth place with a 12-13-9 record, finished with 53 points and made it to the playoffs for the first time in their franchise history. But they lost to the Philadelphia Union in the second round, but it's okay because at that point, that was by far the most successful season that Cincinnati has, and that was a season where nobody thought that Pat Nolan and Chris Albright can just completely change the culture and completely change the identity of this team overnight, and that's exactly what they did. And the reason why it's so remarkable is look what happened in 2021 before the Chris Albright and Pat Nolan era. It was nothing but misery. In 2021, they finished dead last with a 4-8-22 record, one of the worst season that an MLS franchise has had with 20 points, and they did not make it to the playoffs. And they followed that with another one of the worst ever season in MLS history. And I know this is a COVID shortened season, but let's be honest, even if this is not a COVID shortened season, I doubt Cincinnati would get more than 5 or 6 wins. Like the rate that they were going, it looks like they were gonna end up once again in the 20 range in terms of the points total. But they finished with a 4-4-15 record and finished with 16 points, and they did not make it to the playoff. Mind you, half of the wins that they got that COVID shortened season was in the MLS's back term, and that was only the highlight for Cincinnati that season. Really, kind of the only highlight up to that point in their young franchise history. It's just been nothing but misery. And in their expansion season, they finished with a 12th place finish with a 6-6-22 record, finished with 24 points, one of the lowest amount of points that an expansion team has got in their first season, and obviously did not make it to the playoffs. Now, looking at the top goal scorer for this team, unsurprisingly, it's Lucho Acosta with 14 goals. And there's no doubt that, Lucho Acosta wasn't as good as he was last season, though, again, part of that is due to the fact that he did suffer some injuries, especially late in the season, was dealing with a toe injury, and I think that really kind of kept him out. But he was still at times when he didn't suffer that injury, he was still looking at like an MVP kind of level that he was last season. But then you got Lucas Origiano, easily one of the 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 most surprising newcomer, and really a guy that he I think he alongside with Gabriel Peck was going at it in terms of the newcomer of the year. Obviously, unfortunately, Origiano didn't win it, but he still contributed with 11 goals, followed by Yaya Kubo with 10 goals. Then you got Kevin Kelsey with 6 goals, and Yamil Assad, who they just got in the middle of the summer transfer window, somehow chipped in with 4 goals to his name. Top assist leader, you got Lucho Acosta with 20 assists, which is, I think, among the highest amount of assists in the league. In fact, I think he actually leads the league in assists once again. Not the first time we have seen that happen for Lucho Acosta. But then you got Lucas Origiano with 7 assists, followed by Yamil Assad with 5 assists, Pavel Buka with 5 assists, and also Sergio Santos with 5 assists to round up the top five in terms of the assist leader. Best win of the season. It has to be that 6-1 win against Inter Miami. And what's kind of crazy about that win is that was really kind of the peak of Cincinnati this season. That was really when they really hit the peak of them not only retake the spot in the supporter shield standing, but they kind of sent a message to the rest of the league that yeah, we are definitely gunning to try to get ourselves back to the Eastern Conference final and this time finish the job to reach MLS Cup. Now, mind you, yes, they played against an Inter Miami team that did not have Messi, and then they also didn't have some of their best player, but still to be able to win by a huge margin, especially against a Miami team that even without Messi, they were still playing relatively well and still going toe to toe with Cincinnati for that supporter shield standing. So the fact that they absolutely demolished them like that at home, that was very impressive. But unfortunately, like I said, that was really the peak of their season because after that, we talked about before how when you have a big win like that in a game, sometimes in the next game you can definitely suffer a bit of a letdown, and not only they suffer a bit of a letdown the next game, yeah, hey, that letdown kind of lasts almost for the entire second half of the season because it's not long after when they got arguably the best win they have this season and probably the best win they ever had in franchise history. They had their worst loss of the season. They lost 3-1 to the New York Red Bulls on July 20th. And don't let that scoreline distract you the fact that it was an absolute abomination of a performance by FC Cincinnati. It was almost going back to the days when Cincinnati were considered to be the doormat in the league with how they play against the Red Bulls. The Red Bulls absolutely dominated that game against Cincinnati, and that yeah, that easily the worst loss of the season, and really, again, that was kind of also signal no a part of some bad run of form that Cincinnati has had. One of them was also them losing 1-0 to the Chicago Fire at home, nevertheless, and you could even argue that also could be right up there in terms of the worst loss of the season. Consider the Fire, even though the Fire was doing okay, that game was at home, and this is a team that I think that was also one of the thing that kind of went wrong for this team, where this season at TKO Stadium they once again struggle at home compared to previous year. But in terms of despite their struggle at home, the fans still show up every single night. 25,237, good for ninth in the league, and pretty much every single game. I don't really see a lot of empty seats at TKO Stadium, and we know the Cincinnati fan base is one of the best in the league, and this is also a fan base that still shows up even when things are not good. So when things are definitely going well, they're definitely gonna show up, and they were definitely loud throughout the season. Even though again, most times or not, they didn't able to see their home team get a win, and that was kind of one of the biggest reason why Cincinnati didn't finish as well as they did in their previous season. But that being said, looking at the MVP of this team, it's got to be Lucho Acosta. I mean, I would say Lucas Orgiano is a close second, and probably closer than what people think. But at the end of the day, even with the downturn that Lucho Acosta suffered near the end of the season, he's still the MVP of this team. He is the most important piece of this team. Without him, this team that definitely doesn't function as well as they should be, and that there's also a reason why he's considered one of the best number 10 and probably right up there in terms of the top three number 10 in the league, and maybe arguably the best that is not named Lionel Messi. But disappointment, it's got to be Aaron Bupenza, and this one is not even close. I mean, I know he's no longer on this team, which usually I shouldn't pick players that are not on this team anymore. But I mean, just the complete downfall of Aaron Bupenza, a guy that was supposed to be the replacement for Brendan Vasquez, and for a while it seems like it worked out for him, especially last season as well. He was scoring almost at the same rate, or at least close to the same rate as Brendan Vasquez has had. And then this season, he did kind of go off to a decent start, at least in the Concacaf Champions Cup, and then it just completely fall apart in the beginning of the season. And then not only when things fall apart off the field issues started to appear. Remember how I think he was involved in an incident where he got punched by a professional boxer? I mean that must be one of the wildest story I've seen an MLS player have ever endured. But yeah, he got suspended for in that off the field situation, and it just got to a point where his body language was just not there anymore. That yeah, I mean the team just said that we simply cannot continue this, and that eventually they had to terminate his contract because of it. I mean, again, just a guy that he's kind of a guy that just similar to what I said about the last episode with Chicharango, a guy that just took a complete certain downfall because of unfortunately his mental problems and off the field situation. And yeah, if he didn't have that off the field situation and didn't had that downturn in terms of battling mental issue throughout the latter part of his time with Cincinnati, although he would still be on this team and still scoring the goals for this team. Now, in terms of young player to watch, I'm gonna pick Kevin Kelsey, even though I know he kind of cooled off a little bit as the season goes along. When he came in, it looked like he was a perfect replacement for Aaron Bupenza, but unfortunately, he did cool off a little bit. And I will say that because he's still a relatively young player, that maybe can happen where you can have a good run of form, but then things might not work your way. And now it's going to be interesting to see if he can battle back like that with that poor form that he had in the latter part of the season. Though it's going to be tough though, because as I'll mention in a bit, it seems like he might not be the answer in terms of the number 9 spot that the Cincinnati team could have, because as I'll mention, they definitely broke the bank once again in terms of finding their number 9. So what went right for this team? So again, another strong regular season with some great soccer play throughout the beginning of the season as well. The breakout of Lucas Orgiano, who we talk about how hard it is to replace uh guys on your team, even if you sell them for a big amount of money, like they did with Alvaro Barreal. But not only the fact that Cincinnati was able to do so with Lucas Orgiano, but some might even say that he was even better than Alvaro Barrio, especially the numbers that he puts there. And that yeah, this is a guy that there's no doubt if he can continue at the production that he has, he's gonna be in the same shoe as Alvaro Barrio. Eventually, gonna be moving on in a lot of team in Europe or even in South America, is looking to trying to get his signature. And then, of course, the unexpected resurgence of Emil Assad. Again, this is a guy that has been kind of a bit of a journeyman lately, ever since we remember him being in MLS with Atlanta United in their expansion season, and he looked pretty good in that year as well. But then he got transferred to DC United. He kind of looked good at that year as well, but then he just kind of shipped around in the league, never really kind of find his foot, even shipped around back to his native country in Argentina, and then come back to MLS. But nobody thought that he would be having the same impact as he did in his early days in MLS, and especially during his time with Atlanta, and also in the early days of DC United. But what went wrong for this team? Obviously the injuries. Again, the injuries to the back line was obviously the big part. They lost Matt Miazga. They also lost Nick Hagelin again. Those are the two keystone piece in terms of this defense as well. And not to mention they also lost Miles Robinson as well at point of this season as well. I mean, there was that point where this defense was down to like third string defense, and even though they did get some reinforcement there. You know, they of course got Awazium in the middle of the season. You know, he did his best to try to stabilize the ship, but he's nowhere near the quality of the starting center back like Miazga and also Robinson. But the other thing that was a problem besides the back line. I mean everybody were focusing on the problem with the back line being injured. What about the star players too? I mean, the star players for this team is on the attack was also injured at time, and one of those is Lucho Acosta. As I mentioned, he was injured near the end of the season. It was a foot injury, and he just doesn't look the same because of it. And I'm not surprised. Anytime when you suffer a foot injury, and maybe I would say that he kind of rushed his way back to this team. And when you decide to rush your way back to a team like that, more times than not, that's not going to work out, especially when it's a foot injury, and especially of how creative Lucho Acosta could be. But let's also not forget about Obino Wobido as well. He also missed a lot of times this season as well, and he's considered to be one of the best number six in this league, and a guy that has also been a keystone to that defensive midfield spot. So when you add all that, it is no wonder why the Cincinnati team was struggling in the second half of the season. And again, that slow decline to the second half of the season led to a disappointing first round exit. But also, I think another bonus I would say that went wrong, as I mentioned earlier, it's the home form. The home form was absolutely atrocious this season for a team that's supposed to be an MLS Cup contender. They have to sort that out. And what's kind of weird for Cincinnati is that they never have always been a home team throughout their time in MLS. I mean, besides what we saw in 2023. Oh, they have actually not done very well at TKO Stadium, so that's going to be something that they have to sort of address. And as much as I talk about how they have really changed the identity under Pat Nolan, that is something that at least he did change that in 2023. But it feels like it's revert back to problems in the past where this team, for whatever reason, they just don't play as well at home as they do on the road. And their road from this season was absolutely spectacular. I mean, there was at times where they were on like a six game unbeaten run on the road, and that the reason why they finished as high as they did is because they did so well on the road, where even with their disappointing home form at times, they still were among the best in the league. So moving forward, how is this team going to look? So going back to that number 9 position, so they already broke the bank by signing another DP number 9. This time they signed Togo international Kevin Dinky from Cercle Bruges. Now I don't know how good he is, and especially when they decided to spend that much amount of money for a guy that coming from the Belgian league, and especially our you talk about Bruges, you're thinking, oh, he's probably coming from Club Bruges, a team that has a lot of history of doing well in the Belgium league and especially make Champions League appearance. No, this is the different Bruges team. This is Circle Bruges, a lesser known kind of team. So the fact that they paid a huge amount of money to get him like that, they better hope that they see something in this guy that think that he is worth that amount of money, because when you pay that amount of money, there's a lot of pressure on him to perform. And I think there has to be consider again these last couple of number 9s that they have tried throughout last season have failed spectacularly, and that they hope this is finally the guy to do so. And this is also where could also affect in terms of Kevin Kelsey's minutes as well, because he plays in that same position. I have heard that he's also potentially be shopped around the league, which if that's the case, that's going to be interesting, and I wouldn't be surprised there's going to be not an endless option of suitor, because I still think Kevin Kelsey is a very talented player, and even though he had a rough patch of form late in the season, he still he has shown the ability that he can be a decent number 9 in this league. They need depth, especially at the back. So again, with the sale of Awazium and Ian Murphy to the Colorado Rapids, they absolutely need depth. at the back. They are very short in terms of that department, and I'm pretty sure they'll address that. But in general, just overall depth itself, this is not as deep of a team as you think it is, and that maybe is one of the reason why Cincinnati kind of triple in the second half of the season with the lack of quality of the depth that they have. They weren't able to be the same competitive team. Now, granted, yes, when you lose so many star players as Cincinnati has had, any team is going to suffer with that, especially when you don't have the depth to do so. But at the same time, when you're in a murderous conference like the Eastern Conference, like what we're gonna see again next year with a lot of good teams, I think in the East that could compete for those top four spots. You absolutely need the depth to do so because injuries will happen throughout the season. Key players will unfortunately get injured throughout the season, but it's up to Cincinnati to rectify that. And one of the way to rectify that is that they need better quality in terms of the depth chart. And then of course, last thing, if they can of course rectify that, this should be a dangerous team in the Eastern Conference. I think between them and Columbus and Inter Miami, those are the three teams that I can definitely say for sure are going to be among the best once again. Sorry, Orlando City fans. I know you're probably writing down the comments are very are hating me for saying that, or if there's any actually Orlando City fans watching this video. But I think those are the three teams that I think are the top tier teams to come out the East next season. And I know what happened last season with how the East just completely destroyed with all the upsets that has happened. But there's no doubt that I think when it comes to the regular season, at least those are the three teams that I think is going to be finished 1, 2, 3. Again, just like what we saw this season with all three of those teams I mentioned, finish 1, 2, 2, and 3. But for Cincinnati, they're hoping they're going to be the top team out of those three, and it's not going to be easy because those two other teams are absolutely loaded to the rafters, and that Cincinnati needs to add some more depth and needs to add more quality to keep up with those two giant of a team in the Eastern Conference heading into next season. But there you have it. That is pretty much it in terms of the moving forward series of FC Cincinnati. As always, let me know in the comments below what do you think of this video, and if you're a Cincinnati fan, what do you think is the MVP, disappointment, young player to watch, what went right, what went wrong, and most importantly, moving forward, how is this team going to look heading into next season? But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time.